When will Trump's tariffs end?
Tariff is my favorite word in the dictionary.
Markets lost $6 trillion the week the tariffs were announced. The dollar fell. JP Morgan economists say the Trump administration's tariffs, if sustained, would be the biggest tax increase since 1968, with the recession risks now above 60%.
We forecast recession. We're not by any means saying that's the only thing that could happen here. I think we have an economy that is still on solid ground. It's getting hit by big shocks. What we got this week was a very big tax increase on U.S. businesses and households. We would scale it.
Tax
in terms of
increase?
a roughly 20% rise in tariff rates to basically the highest tax increase we've had in the U.S., if it's going to be fully delivered, that we've had since 1968.
This is the biggest policy mistake in 95 years. It's a self-inflicted wound. Unforced error, did not have to happen.
Some economists worry that the Federal Reserve cannot easily offset the damage due to elevated inflation and credibility concerns.
The embers of inflation are still smoldering. We are in a different context than we were, and the Fed has evoked several times the cautionary tale of the 1970s.
I don't know why Trump didn't learn the lesson of the Smoot-Hawley tariff, because I know the Fed learned the lesson of its mistakes in 1930, 31, and 32. That's one reason why the great financial crisis did not turn into a Great Depression.
The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930 raised U.S. import duties to record levels. It triggered global retaliation and may have deepened the Great Depression. Here's how long the tariffs might last, and whether the U.S. is heading toward a recession. The president has broad executive authority over tariffs, allowing him to raise, lower, or remove them at will. This flexibility has fueled speculation about President Trump's endgame, with some viewing the tariffs as a tactical opening move designed to create leverage in future negotiations.
I would assume that this will not be in place in a month, 2 months, definitely not in the back half of the year. So I'm in the camp that this is the beginning of a big negotiation. We're going to be hearing about tariffs for quite a while now, and the president has set the stage for what he loves to do.
Trump's voice says more than 50 countries have reached out tariff talks
for the foreseeable future
more than
with
50
each one of these countries.
Donald Trump has a lot of motivations. Many of those motivations contradict each other. The number one motivation is that the United States runs a trade deficit, that we buy more from the rest of the world than we sell more to the rest of the world. I think that's largely a function of American strength. I don't think these tariffs are going to help. And so in that sense, we're still going to have a trade deficit 6 months from now. We're still going to have one 3 years from now. I think some of these go away because they're just so crazy. But I don't think the 10% is going away. We have just so much uncertainty now, record amounts. How much does this matter? How do these tariffs get resolved? I think they're just so crazy that we're not going to have them 2 months from now. On the other hand, I didn't think we'd have them now, so who knows?
There's also a question of how much pain in the stock market the White House is willing to tolerate.
It's essentially an economic Armageddon. You know, if these tariffs stayed in place, this is as nervous as I've seen investors going back to COVID March 2020. You have to assume that these tariffs don't hold in their current form. If they hold in their current form, then essentially you have 15 to 20% demand destruction across the board in terms of costs that are actually going to have to come through.
The most important thing is for countries to come to us not offering zero tariffs, which is disingenuous because it won't get us anything. What they have to do is tell us they're going to drop all their non-tariff cheating. That takes a little time here, okay? We got a $1.2 trillion deficit. I expect the market to quickly find a bottom.
They've made a conclusion that the market is efficient. Hopefully this will be a negotiation of let's get to the table, let's negotiate fair deals. The tariffs were the only thing that got China to the table to negotiate. And there's no question that China's market has been closed to us for a long time, and our market's open to them. And if we could rebalance that and we could create an opportunity for U.S. companies to do business in China with a growing middle class, that's a big opportunity.
In response to a request for comment, the White House pointed CNBC to President Trump's statements to the press on April 7th.
There can be permanent tariffs, and there can also be negotiations, because there are things that we need beyond tariffs. Tariffs are very important, but there are a lot of things like opening up countries that were totally closed. China is essentially a closed country. In fact, it is a closed country. So We're going to get fair deals and good deals with every country, and if we don't, we're going to have nothing to do with them.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told Face the Nation that the White House is not wavering.
There is no postponing. They are definitely going to stay in place for days and weeks. That is sort of obvious. The president needs to reset global trade. Everybody has a trade surplus, and we have a trade deficit. We are paying away our future and our lives. The countries of the world are ripping us off, and it's got to end. The president has made it crystal clear.
People thought that while this administration moved in extreme ways, it still had a commitment to supporting the business sector and the expansion. I think that's being challenged.
Switching tax services can be a drag and drop. At H&R Block, switching to us couldn't be.
The tariffs put Congress in a difficult political and fiscal position, especially if the economy and markets continue to take a hit.
Oh,
dude. Sorry.
$600
billion of revenue from these tariff increases. That gives Congress more resources to say, what can we do? Because extending the existing tax cuts is no longer an option. You're going to need to see lower marginal tax rates, lower corporate tax rates, and more incentives to invest to ease that pain and to push off a possible and growing likelihood of a recession.
Republican members of Congress may be breaking from the White House. Senator Chuck Grassley introduced a bill on April 3rd that would give Congress the power to approve or roll back tariffs. He was joined by at least 3 other Republican senators.
What I expect, for every action, there's a reaction. A more pro-growth and a faster tax bill, possibly the Fed being forced to cut rates, and you can see some global policy changing as countries realize that they're going to have to do something for themselves now that Trump has this onerous policy on them.
Many major economists now forecast a mild recession in the U.S. if the tariffs stay in place.
We actually now have a recession with stagflation, and that's what the Federal Reserve, a mild recession with stagflation, and this is a high watermark in employment. We've seen WARN notices pick up. We think there will be some employment losses due to the tariffs as well. And so we're looking at, retaliatory environment, how much retaliation you put in. If you take all of the tariffs at face value, because they layer on top of each other, and many people are not really looking at how these do that, if they were to sustain, they would be the highest since the early 1900s, which is really sort of stunning.
Damn, what is
to
this,
think
1932?
About that. Wholeheartedly with this 100s, which is
again, the tariff becomes a domination. 1932, October 16th, September. What though? I mean, Sunday. What the fuck? This is cool.
really sort of stunning.
Some
to think
Call
about
of
that,
Duty.
maybe wholeheartedly with this being a very large tax increase on the U.S. economy.
Where things are going to matter right now is to what degree does consumer purchasing power get squeezed by a higher inflation, and to what degree does a consumer which still has the wherewithal to cushion the blow and has consistently been cushioning the blow of higher inflation and periods of temporary softening in labor demand over the last 10 years, whether it will continue to do so. We're concerned that that's going to be harder to do in a world in which inflation is high, business sentiment is weakening, and the labor market is softening. But it's by no means clear, by any means 100%, what's going to happen here.
The shock of this sort of suddenly, with no pre-negotiations, no congressional input, and that uncertainty, I think, will reverberate for a number of years in the economy, even if, 2 weeks from now, he removes it. Now, if he removes it, we won't have a recession. We'll have a slowdown. Long-term economic plans, depending on knowing the regime you are in and the rules of the game and the tax structure you are in, when that's all thrown to uncertainty, it just throws a wet blanket over your decisions.
It's very informational.